By the way, how many of you think today, or how many of you today are young? Can I see by a show of hands? How many of you today are young? Okay, how many of you think you are young? All the great pretenders. I'm kidding, all right? What are these youthful lusts? Well, it affects young people. What is the definition of a young people? It's very hard to define, right? Young, what do you mean by young? By the way, do you know how young or how old Timothy was when Paul wrote these words to him? Timothy, by commentators' estimation and study, they say Timothy is not a 10-plus-year-old teenager. He's also not a 20-plus-year-old young person. Timothy at this time was somewhere between 36 to 42 years old. Hey, I'm young. I'm younger than Timothy. And if you're 40 and below, you are young, all right? But even if you're 50 and 60 and 70, I think all of us are equally vulnerable to lusts. Sexual lusts, lust of the eyes, lust of the pride, lust of the flesh and the pride of life. These are things that can afflict all of us, although the young are probably in a greater propensity towards it. And Paul is saying to Timothy, Timothy, you need to run. You need to run away from these lusts, these temptations that can trap you. The word flee is written in the Greek in a very forceful way. For Greek scholars, they say this is written in the imperative mood. In other words, it is written like a command. It is a very forceful word. Paul is not saying, hey, please, if you can, try to run. No, he says, you need to run. It is a command. Flee. The word flee here in the Greek comes from the word fugo. Sounds familiar? Fugo. What word is similar to fugo? What English word is derived from the Greek word fugo? You think about it, is to run, is to flee, and so fugo is the word we get, the English word? Fugitive. Very good. So be like a fugitive. Run away from temptations that will snare you. Escape. Keep a great distance away. Fugitive. That's what it is. And Paul is saying to Timothy, this is very important for you. Very, very important for you. Actively run away from temptations, from lusts that can destroy your soul. You see, he needs to give a strong command because we are often very dull to spiritual dangers. You know, we're very blur. We are very alert to property changes. We are very alert to stock market fluctuations. But when it comes to spiritual living, we sometimes are very blur. Just this week, I read about a blur animal. But an unfortunate blur animal. The deer. Do you know about the deer? Oh dear, you don't know the deer. This is a major story, man. The day it was in the news and so on. The deer that do not know where it came from, they say it's from the nature reserves and so on and so on. It wandered onto the SLE, Seletar Expressway. I think the deer must be having a whale of a time. Wow! For the first time I'm out of the jungle. Hey, I can see lights. The road is smooth. It's great. And that's the last you hear of the deer. Oh dear. It's gone. Hey, I think the deer did not quite realize the danger when he went onto the expressway. And there he was banged and knocked down, and he probably would live to regret it. He did not die. It did not die immediately. It has to be put down by the vets subsequently. But isn't it true in our own lives we are oblivious to dangers? We wander unto temptations thinking that, oh, there's bright lights, it's exciting, it's nice. But before we know it, sin knocks us down. And so Paul says, don't get even close to these things. Run like a fugitive. Escape from it. Another illustration I can find in this week's news. This week's news is quite exciting. Huh? This week's news is about these items. Have you seen this before? What is this called? Stress? What is this called? Stress balls. No, too small. Very hard to de-stress. Yeah, it's in the Ai Tong Primary School. Ai Tong Primary School had a group of students who had chain vomiting and diarrhea. One group of them. And they found out that the cause of the vomiting and diarrhea were these things. These were toys. They are called extrusion beans. extrusion, you extrude things, extrusion beans. And what it is a plastic pot. And you can open it and squeeze and some plastic beans will come out. But what has happened is that the toy manufacturer, in its zeal, has put too much plasticizer. Plasticizers are kind of chemicals that soften plastic so that it's malleable and flexible so that you can extrude your beans. So they had too much of these chemicals. The students didn't know. They were playing, they were squeezing, they were contaminating their hands with all these plasticizers. And when they went for a meal, they did not wash their hands. And without knowing it, playing with these extrusion beans gave them a problem with diarrhea and vomiting subsequently. They were sick. They were unwell because of it. Christians oftentimes dabble with spiritual extrusion beans. Hey, it looks fun. Hey, a little temptation, a little flirtation today is fine. A little surfing on the web is fine. You know, a little bad company occasionally is fine. But you do not know that when you dabble with it long enough, it's not fine. It's going to ruin you. That's why Paul doesn't take it lightly. He, like a father, he's somewhat 30 years older than Timothy. He has gone that way probably. He says to Timothy, flee from this youthful lust. Run away from them because it's going to destroy you. Tim, if you want to be a useful vessel, if you want to be an honorable vessel, make sure you run away from it. I think of a man who ran very well. His name is Joseph. Joseph of the Bible. I mean, he was in a place of temptation, isn't it? Potiphar's wife comes to him daily and says, Joseph, lie with me. Joseph, lie with me. Or Joseph, sleep with me. You know, Joseph could have 1,001 reasons to say, yes, I will sleep with you. He could say, well, nobody loves me. My father doesn't love me. My brothers don't love me. They sell me to Potiphar. So I'm going to just do things the way I want. Joseph could have said that. Or Joseph could have said, you know, I'm such a capable man. I came to here as a slave, but now I'm a householder in Potiphar's house. I'm a capable man. I deserve a break like this. Or Joseph might have thought to himself, what's wrong with a little fling? Nobody's got to know. Just between me and her. I could do it. She's an attractive lady. Why not? He could have said and rationalized all these things. But daily he said to Potiphar's wife, I cannot sin against God. I cannot do this against Potiphar, my master. And when the woman was desperate, she tried to grab hold of him. Joseph ran away from the house. He fled. And that was how this young man was kept pure and useful for the glory of God. You contrast that with another man of the Bible. His name is Samson. And you realize a difference in Samson's life. Samson loved a woman he should not love. I mean, he messed around with someone he should not mess around with. I mean, Delilah was a woman who wanted his death. Delilah was not someone who loved him. Delilah was someone who wanted to trap him. But you know, Samson just flirted with danger. I could imagine him with his head laying upon Delilah's lap. And Delilah just saying, Samson, Samson, tell me the secret of your power. And Samson did not know that he was facing spiritual ruin that very day. Joseph was a man who fled from temptations. Joseph was a man who fled from youthful lust. Samson was a man who flirted with it. And the outcomes are dramatically different. You know, after I shared the message in the first service, a brother came up to me and passed me a newspaper. And I brought it here, and it is this. It shocked me for a moment, and I'm just going to show you today's new paper on Sunday. Jack Neo, 50, admits affair with model, 22. Wife's reaction shocks mistress. I took some time to read it, and I just want to share what he said. Jack got his pastor, his church friend, together, and they wanted to resolve the issue together. And he said, I've told her that we shouldn't, but we were muddled. I knew we should have ended things earlier, but she could not let go, so we carried on till this day.